Police Federation of England and Wales says officers have faced a real-term salary cut of more than 20%.
Good day and welcome back to the British Report channel. We have a full-blown political and environmental crisis gripping the nation as angry supporters of the Labour Party, the very people who voted them in, are taking to the streets in protest after catastrophic new rumours confirm Prime Minister Keir Starmer is poised to break another major promise to the British people. The promise in question is the commitment to safeguard the UK's already fragile natural environment, a pledge that is now being sacrificed on the altar of a build-at-any-cost agenda driven by a desperate need for economic growth. The betrayal is focused on the government's reaction to the industry-led task force on nuclear energy proposals, which Starmer has pledged to implement right across our economy. This means deliberately undermining rules that protect our most precious wildlife sites and, even more damningly, pulling the rug out from under the innovative Biodiversity Net Gain (BNG) scheme just as it was starting to deliver. The sight of thousands of environmentalists, conservationists and furious former Labour voters occupying the streets is the ultimate sign that Starmer's credibility is collapsing under the weight of his broken word, triggering a nightmare before Christmas for the UK's natural world. The source of the public fury is the Prime Minister's embrace of the task force on nuclear energy's radical recommendations, which go far beyond just streamlining the nuclear sector. Starmer has seized upon this report not just to fast-track nuclear power, but to use it as a Trojan horse to undermine rules that protect our most precious wildlife sites for every corner of the economy. Experts and nature charities are sounding the alarm, warning that implementing these recommendations will inevitably lead to the biggest environmental deregulation in decades, potentially gutting core protections derived from former EU habitat and environment law. This has been explicitly confirmed by the Prime Minister himself, who, in a recent speech, spoke of the need to eliminate well-intentioned but fundamentally misguided environmental regulations. This language, echoing the very same anti-nature rhetoric that plagued the previous administration, is a direct kick in the teeth to the millions who voted Labour based on their explicit promise to restore nature and end the decline of species. The most shocking element of this rumoured U-turn is the government's apparent plan to deliberately torpedo the Biodiversity Net Gain (BNG) scheme. BNG, a cross-party initiative that only recently became mandatory for major developments, requires developers to deliver a 5,000 text 8% or increase in biodiversity on or off-site, effectively making them pay for nature's recovery. This scheme had successfully catalysed a new market for nature restoration, with economists estimating it could unlock hundreds of millions of pounds annually in private investment for conservation. However, the government has been consulting on exempting small sites from BNG requirements, and the strong rumour circulating among charities like the Wildlife Trusts and in the press is that an announcement is imminent, possibly before the Christmas recess, that will implement these exemptions on such a scale as to cause the entire market to collapse. Analysis has shown that exempting small sites, which account for the vast majority of all housing developments, could see an area of nature the size of a national park being built on with no requirement to compensate for the harm done, making a mockery of the government's legally binding targets to halt species decline by $9 text 2030 2.0. The widespread anger is rooted in the government's lazy adoption of the anti-nature rhetoric perpetuated by powerful industry lobbyists. Starmer and his Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, are openly repeating the cliché that nature protection, represented by bats and newts, is the primary blocker to growth and the reason for slow development. Yet, as the Environmental Audit Committee has consistently found, this narrative is false. The real barriers to development are far more mundane, including a skills shortage, building costs, and poor policy decisions. Wildlife experts point out that planning appeals citing nature protections such as bats and newts account for a tiny fraction of the total, proving that the government is simply scapegoating nature to avoid addressing the fundamental issues in the economy and the planning system. They are also ignoring the fact that the UK is already one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world, and any further erosion of protections will have long-term economic consequences in terms of flood control, soil fertility and public health. The protesters taking to the streets are sending a unified message to No 10. End this divisive, outdated 1970s approach that pits nature and the economy against each other. They are demanding that the Prime Minister honour his original promises by embracing a more modern approach that requires the restoration of natural infrastructure alongside new housing and energy development. This move to break a major environmental promise for short-term growth has not only betrayed the faith of environmental voters, but has confirmed Starmer's willingness to abandon his principles under pressure, placing him squarely in the crosshairs of a major public revolt. The coming days will reveal whether the Prime Minister can withstand the pressure from his own disillusioned supporters and the environmental movement, or if this betrayal will become yet another critical wound to his already flagging premiership.